Hey everybody, Mike with Games Play Badly, and today on Session Zero I have Matthew, who is an awesome creator of all things D&D. Tons of really good stuff up there, but some of them are really, really tasty. Made me hungry during the interview talking to him, and I really enjoyed conversation. He also has a new class, and actually several subclasses, things like that he's written. One of them is the Bard of Technology. So if you're a Bard fan or you're a food fan, definitely stick around for that. As always, I have my Gem Firefly shirt on. If you would like a shirt like this or something completely different, go take a look at gemfirefly.com and peruse around. And when you find the shirt that you like, or shirts, or mugs, or flags, use our code BADLY15, BADLY 15 at checkout for 15% off your order. Matt's right around the corner, and I can't wait for you to meet him. That interview starts now. Hey, Matt, how are you?
Good afternoon, Mike. Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. We've been talking for the past couple weeks, and weird things have happened in my neck of the woods. I lost power for a little bit, didn't have internet one day, and it's just been kind of crazy. But I'm glad we were finally able to get together. So you are a TTRPG creator, and I will have links to all of your good works down below in the description. Why don't you tell me more about you?
Well, I am a neurodivergent content creator, predominantly for D&D, but I have done works for the Star Wars FFG and other accoutrements for my team. I have ADS, I have ADHD, as well as having a couple other more personal neuro idiosyncrasies. And well, I'm just so happy to be able to talk about
it. So now you talk about some idiosyncrasies, and I think we talked about this off camera. I think to an extent, a lot of us have undiagnosed idiosyncrasies, but we are both dyslexic, and I'm pretty sure I'm on some form of ADHD at some point, because I just believe me, it's that's the way my life is.
Absolutely.
But so how does that affect your content creation?
Well, it's actually made thinking up a lot of ideas. Like, I'm not to say that this makes me more creative. That's a wrong way of thinking about the type of neurodivergency, but I'm a very creative person. I do come up with weird ideas. I go off on tangents, and I started putting them together into sort of themed consolidations. And then really, I just started putting them to paper, quite literally. And that's sort of my inspiration, this outlet, this creative sort of object I could put my focus into. And it's been wonderful for it. And in doing so, it's helped me understand other people's idiosyncrasies, other people's inabilities, and it's kind of blossomed from there.
Yeah, I will say from my own personal experience, I have a million ideas all the time, and executing one can be a challenge. Do you find that to be something that you struggle with as well?
The biggest problem that I have is literally just putting the idea down. I can think them up all darn day, but actually typing them out, plus with my dyslexia, it's incredibly hard. I've even had to get Grammarly. Although what has helped me is using a voice to text program, and that has markedly helped. And that's kind of what I've learned, that we all have to find our own way to be creative, and this one was mine, and it works wonderfully.
So how have you brought these challenges into your works? I know we talked about that there were some various modules that you had worked on that kind of bring some of these things to the head. Why don't you tell me more about that?
The biggest one I can share with is Trouble in Tranquility Town, which me and my team made as part of an inclusivity, but sort of like all together group work, where we all tried to create things that were safe or inclusive for those of different needs. Specifically in ours, we had a obviously neurodivergent character, we had a character who was missing limbs, and we had a character in a wheelchair. And we didn't spend the time glorifying them. We didn't spend the time pitying them. They were just characters, and that's kind of what we've been trying to do. It's, you don't necessarily need, maybe I'm talking too much, but you don't necessarily need to glorify a person's inability, or they're able to do good. That's kind of, it's the phrase used for is inspiration and the P word you're not really supposed to use, but just actually being able to have them in there and shown as people was incredible. And that's what the entirety of Trouble in Tranquility Town was about. Just having these characters in there and just living.
Right. Yeah, I mean, much like we are in the real world, I think a lot of people, various issues are invisible to modern society. And so it's always good to just show people as what they are, people.
Or or villains. That's actually kind of one of the big things we found. There is a lot of characters who have like a whited over eye showing that they're blind, which is not really a thing in the real world, or having a missing hook, but it's a cybernetic prosthetic, but it has them be as villains, which is kind of bad for the community as a whole because it starts reaffirming these ideas. One of the things that my work has been trying to put together is we want to add sensitivity. We want D&D and other TTRPGs to incorporate more sensitivity readers, people who are just there to like go over works and say, hey, this might not be kosher for this culture. This not might be kosher for this community. And one of the things is trying to find one for the disability community, being able to show that, hey, we can't just have every villain have a hook or a blind eye, because subconsciously that kind of puts a bad look on those who actually have some kind of blindness or some kind of inability. And that's what my work's been trying to push together, that sometimes we're just people.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. So from the you seem to have quite a few works that are up there. What is one of your favorites?
Oh, one of my favorites. I kind of have to go with my first one, which is Niter's Niter's Yeo Candy Shop, Chapter 1
I
of
did
our
see that.
Questionable Confectionaries works. It spearheaded the whole thing. The idea of, I like magic items. I like having high magic settings. And one of the problems that I found is, it's like, oh, look at all these magic items, but now we have to juggle attunements, now we have to juggle how overpowered they are, which is why I thought, let's make more useful consumable items. And thus, I created Niters, which is magical sweets and candies. Some of them are familiar to brands we know, some of them aren't. One of my more prouder works are gummy worms, spelled with a Y, as in the dragon. Consuming them gives the user a burrow speed, much like most dragon.
Yeah, I actually did take a look at that one because what I found interesting was while the items themselves that were created were, it was the various ingredients that you had to create them, which could be a subplot on its own within an adventure for someone who wants to create something like that.
In the second volume of Questionable Confectionaries, Cauldron's Tavernside Bistro, we actually had one that I was super proud of. I love dragon fruit in real life. And so we made a legendary item, a dragon fruit parfait, which is made out of dragon fruit that's specifically grown in a dragon's domain. So
Interesting.
It's a magical dragon fruit that embodies the powers of that dragon. And thus we created this whole story of how chromatic dragons hate these because they feel as if it is draining some of their power because it's the only thing that could thrive in their environment. But metallic dragons favor it because it's incredibly delicious, and so they will pay handsomely for it. It's making one of those alone is its own adventure, or
accumulating it, because if you're saying they only grow in a dragon's domain, that means you have possibly a dragon to contend to get it. So that's pretty interesting. So how long have you been playing D&D?
Oh, it must be about 6 years now. I dabbled in it with before then, but no, only in the last 6 years seems like a cliche, but you can kind of think Critical Role during the early days.
Yep.
But through that, I found some great, meaningful connections, some friends. More importantly, I found an environment where I can express myself, where I don't have to be me purely, but I can still be me, if that makes any sense. And
absolutely.
From that, I've found new friends, I've found great communities, I found love, and so much more. And so I have to credit D&D quite a bit. It found me in a kind of dark place in my life, and it gave me something where I could produce light.
That's something very similar to, I mean, when I was younger, I had I had some issues, and D&D kind of helped me work through those, at least for myself. Maybe not for the folks in my group, but for me, it really helped me get through some headspace that I wasn't quite sure how to get out of. So why don't you tell me more about some of the other things that you created?
Well, as part of Cauldron's Tavernside Bistro, Questionable Consumables Volume 2, if you want to call it that, I made an artificer subclass.
Okay.
Mostly because I love artificers. I love tinkering. I love building. I I love finding solutions that are non-conventional. But I wanted to make it fit in with what was going on. And so I made Cauldron a gourmand subclass, an artificer subclass that's designed to work around food. In
Hmm.
particular, it can craft consumables easier, and it has one of my favorite abilities that I borrowed inspiration from another game called Special Spice,
Hmm.
where anyone who eats a meal made by the gourmand effectively works as a conduit for their spells. And if the gourmand can see them, he can cast a spell through them or
Oh,
into them.
interesting.
So if the barbarian can share a meal, you can then cast haste so long as you can see them, or you can make the group's pet cast fireball,
Mhm. No, that's pretty interesting.
among as a among as a couple other things, including his made to order ability, his keystone, where he can actually switch the elemental type on spells based on different spices he can use.
Hmm. That's pretty
Uh,
powerful stuff.
it it is, but it's not. We've worked very hard to make sure it wasn't game breaking, just more flavorful. Like
Sure.
much like the Bard of Technology, the Bard subclass I made. This one I came up with out of the blue. What if there was a Bard that focused more on technological aspects? And thus, the Bard of Technology. The Bard of the College of Technology, I guess it's typically called. Not really an artificer bard, though he does get an infusion. His big aspect is his musical tools.
Hmm.
During a long rest, he can get either a boom stick or a boom box. So it's not a shotgun. It's literally a microphone or a boom box that he can carry around. His microphone can extend any spell that has a vocal component,
Oh,
where his
wow.
boom box can extend any spell that doesn't have a vocal component. So if you want to talk your way out of something, the boomstick is good. If you want to lay the bass, the boom box is quite powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really unique. I've never heard anything like that before.
I
That's
wanted
very
to try
cool.
and give the bard something a little more unique and a little more musical flair. I don't know. I've seen a lot of subclasses do some. Like I loved the Bard of Sea Shanties, but other
Hmm.
than that, it's just glamour, etiquette, whispers, and they're all very good. But let's bring some music back to the Bard, eh?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think Critical Role has did a whole. Everybody wants to be.
Scanlan.
Yeah, everybody wants to be Scanlan now, and so I think I like seeing all the various subclasses that are coming out for them because you don't always have to be Scanlan to be a good bard. My husband actually has a bard in one of the adventures that we've played in, and he actually went through and wrote a bunch of parodies to a bunch of different music, so that way he'd have something to sing for his various spells. So I really enjoyed that. That was a lot of fun.
The last time I played a Bard, I used college fight songs.
Oh, that's funny.
So I figured that's too perfect. Although the next Bard I want to do, I'm gonna be kind of proud of. I'm stealing the idea from someone else. I want to do like an older dad Bard,
Hmm.
like 40s, early 50s, just kind of happy to be there. Lots of dad puns.
Yeah, right, exactly. That'd be pretty good. And then he has his own drum kit for the shot after
Yes.
every.
Kind of swinging back to one of my focuses. Another big thing I made was the Zimmer's flame. Mostly to do with AC Badger, part of the team, my sensitivity writer or reader. They wanted to create an item based on a Zimmer frame, which you and I would think of as it's the walker with the little tennis balls.
Hmm.
And so we made a D&D item that's a mobility item called the Zimmer's Flame. It's
Hmm.
actually using parts of the elemental plane of fire. So it is a mobility item. It is still a walker,
Hmm.
but it has more to it. And it even has an evolutionary standpoint of where if you destroy something, if you destroy a fire elemental, it gains strength. If you go to the elemental plane of fire, it gets more powerful, that sort of thing.
Hmm.
And besides the pun, which I thought was hysterical, I love the artwork and The artwork alone is what helped me create the item, and that's why I wanted to mention AC Badger. So I just wanted to make sure I get their name right, because they're the ones who actually make all the art for my books.
Awesome. Yeah, I love promoting artists.
A good chunk of these items were art first and then object. So
Hmm.
I have to credit them somewhere. And
There are a lot of folks who work that way, where art is the inspiration for the creation, whether it be a module, such as some of the interviews that I've done with people who have literally looked at an artist's work and used their work to go ahead and create something spectacular. So totally get that.
one of the things that I did want to look at is part of what we were doing with all the stuff that we're making is we're also making dyslexic, easy read PDF versions of them.
Okay.
So we're actually trying to go out of our way to make sure that other people have an easier time reading through it, because like me, I'm dyslexic, so it's having such a hard time. Like, we're actually trying to make even the PDFs themselves easier to read for people, because we
Oh,
want
that's wonderful.
everyone to have a chance.
Well,
And
how do you go about doing that? I mean, what are the tools that you're using to, because dyslexia, I know for everybody it has different triggers in different forms, but so I've noticed that kerning or spacing between letters and words tends to help me. What are you using for your various module?
that's going to be that's unfortunately a bigger question for my sensitivity writer, AC Badger. But one of the big things we do is bolding. We
Okay.
make sure that if it's a very sensitive piece of information, it is bold and upfront, specifically numbers, timing, and keyword frames or key words. Actually, it's because of their writing that we actually also looked into making better, let's say more friendlier words for certain status effects. Going all the way back to neurodivergent and capability. There are words that are used in D&D right now that, let's say, are not kosher. These words are paralyzed and blinded and deafened. To the communities that are paralyzed, blinded, or deafened, these conditions can actually be kind of insulting. There's even a C word that's used a lot for describing someone who has been maimed or harmed that is just a no-go at all. And part of the works we've released, we've actually wanted to change the phrasing on that. For instance, for paralyzed, which doesn't really make sense if you actually experience paralysis. You're not really paralyzed in the D&D sense. So we've chosen as kind of like when you get a muscle spasm, all of your nerves tighten, like it's hard to move. We've also chosen the word fog seeing and fog hearing instead of blinded, deafened. Because again, to be blinded is far more severe than it is to just not be able to see for the moment.
And not to mention, those are all temporary in the game. They're all temporary conditions.
But they're more permanent representations.
Absolutely.
Like we're talking with people to try and figure out, hey, is this okay? And we've gone out of our way to try and make sure that we use the correct phrasing, the correct sensitive words. And that's all that we're trying to ask from TTRPGs in general, to hire even just a single person for sensitivity writing, to make sure that the correct cultures are being represented, the correct communities are being represented. And we're not the only people doing this. I'm not going to claim to be some champion on a hill, but we're one of many who want to help make these games more inclusive, to make these games feel safer for everyone. And we're all just trying to do our part to do just that.
Yeah, I think it's a noble mission, and it's something that needs to happen. It needs to change. And I'd never really thought about the various conditions as far as paralyzed, deaf, blinded, and their effect on people who actually suffer from some sort of paralysis, some sort of deafness, and some degree of blindness. Because the way the game presents it, it's a one-off condition, and people kind of shrug it off and say, okay, this is temporary, blah blah. But again, for some people, those are actual conditions that they suffer from. So I understand now the reason why those would be offensive to those who suffer from them. So I appreciate that. Do you have any additional projects, Camp? Anything that you can wet my whistle with? Anything we could be excited for release of?
Well, I am currently streaming on Twitch, trying to do every Tuesday, but that might change in the future. Definitely keep an eye on my Twitter. Big things I could talk about is, well, yes, I'm actually working on Questionable Confectionaries Volume 3. and we're doing, well, we don't have an official surname for it other than Zakitis, but we are looking at making D&D alcohols, mixed cocktails in the bunch. And we're taking a unique spin on it. I guess I could talk about it right now. The drinks that we're making have unique effects depending on if you drink them quickly or slowly.
Oh.
So the same effect, but, well, not the same effect. Similar effects depending on if you enjoy it or if you slug it. And with any luck, it should be out in a month or two.
Oh, that sounds fun. It's going to be up on DM's Guild as well?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. I'll have links to everything below, so that way people can go in and look at all the creations that you have.
Thank you ever so much for this opportunity.
Absolutely, Matt. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on. I cannot wait to hear what you create next. And you've made me sufficiently hungry, so now I'm going to have to go upstairs and have some lunch. That being said, let me know if you do anything in the future. I'd love to talk to you again.
Absolutely.
And best of luck, and you're doing some good work. So I know that I appreciate it. I'm sure there are a lot more people outside of me who appreciate the work that you're trying to do.
Thank you. I can only hope we make some little difference.
Oh, I'm sure you will. I'm sure you will. Well, we'll talk soon.
Goodbye.